Helldivers 2 has blown us all away with the fact that it's kind of fun, even really fun, but it's been weighed down by an albatross around its neck, and that has been its own popularity. It's too popular for its own good. Everybody wants to play it, and yet they've not really been able to. I was actually talking to my buddy Corey about it because we were playing the game one night, I think probably Monday, Tuesday, something like that. And we were playing it together, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I was out in public. I think he was getting lunch or something. And he's like in line at Qdoba. And he said the guys behind him were talking about Helldivers. And he was like, I play Helldivers. So I started to kind of eavesdrop a little bit. And he said that they were going on about how they were really excited to play it. They loved all the memes on TikTok and everything, but that they had not been able to play it more than 3 hours in the last week. He was like, and this was totally just, I heard it in public. Somebody, I have no idea who they are, casually talking about this game. And they said that they couldn't get more than 3 hours put in a week of trying. He said one of the guys said that over the weekend, he had sat with the game up for 8 hours and only got to play 3 hours. That represents the average player's frustrations with Helldivers. It's an awesome game that is too popular for its own good. And one of the things that has been going around is people just like, oh, well, they should just go and they should just pay for more server space. They should just buy more server racks and then just scale it. And it doesn't seem like it's that easy. Helldivers 2 studio CEO says capacity issues aren't just a case of buying more servers. We are hitting some real limits, he says. His exact quote was, "It's not a matter of money or buying more servers," the CEO said. "It's a matter of labor. We need to optimize the back-end code, and we are hitting some real limits." This is kind of going in line with what I was mentioning about that software engineer that was talking about Suicide Squad's backend, where he thought that was probably coded in a way where they were assuming a certain number of players. And now that they're under like 800 concurrent players on a day-to-day basis, they don't have enough players to allow the system to function properly. Kind of like an engine, if you don't have enough oil to keep the gears turning smoothly, it just doesn't really work. It seems like something like that has also happened with the backend code of Suicide Squad. The opposite problem is with Helldivers, where they have so much oil, everything is just kind of slipping and sliding into chaos, where they have so many people trying to get in there that they can't actually fit it all in. And they're hitting some back end issues where they can't, like they're just struggling to find ways to support that many players. Shortly after this, this was funny, a user on Twitter told the CEO of Arrowhead, "Stop tweeting and fix the problem." And so he replied, "Yes, good idea. I will sit behind the engineers and ask them, are we there yet? Or I could let the engineers work independently towards our common goal without me as the CEO pestering them at every moment. I wonder which one works best." Which is just, it's just funny. It's like, yeah, no, when you put it like that, that other guy sounds real stupid, real dumb. So they've been working on the back-end code, trying to find ways to improve it. One of the things they needed to fix were AFK players. If you're not familiar with that, it's away from keyboard. Basically, it's just when somebody logs into a game and leaves it up while they do other stuff or while they physically leave their computer, go to work or whatever else. What players were doing is they were logging into Helldivers, getting sat basically in the queue where it's like, oh, servers are at capacity, trying again in 30 seconds. And they would just pull that up and go to work or go to sleep. And then when they would come back hours and hours later, they would be logged in after letting the system kind of find a spot for them, and they would start playing. And they just would never close the game because there was no AFK booting in the game, which is a funny oversight. I think it really shows they did not expect this game to be as popular as it was. That same friend, Corey, he was telling me about when Asmongold played Final Fantasy 14, I think it was, the big MMO game. He said when they played that, when Asmongold played that, the servers were like so weighed down with the popularity of Asmongold and all of his viewers coming in and trying the game because they had a bunch of demos and stuff available to players that they had to institute an AFK kicking system for the servers, which they previously didn't have, because apparently, I didn't know this, in a lot of MMOs, people just never log out. they just leave the game running and they'll just like emote or something for nonstop hours and hours and hours in the like common areas. Yeah, WoW has had that for ages. It's why when you hear people say, oh, I have 4 years of gameplay time in this video game, it's like, that's insane. But it also is probably because they leave the game logged in and running 24/7. So even on days when they're not playing, they're still getting playtime from it. So it's not always the best representative count of playtime. But anyway, Helldivers 2 did not have a way of kicking players from the server. It just didn't. I don't think they expected to have this problem. So they had to institute that fix, and they did that. There is now a patch that will kick you if you're AFK, which is awesome. That's awesome. Furthermore, last night, they issued another patch. The CEO said, I have one final update for tonight. We have updated the max concurrent user cap to 700,000 players. Unfortunately, we expect, we expect the concurrent users to reach that level. And we believe that the wait times will be much more bearable though. Tomorrow we are doing some final improvements for the weekend. So they've improved it all the way up to 700,000. Even now in the middle of a work day, they're at like 280 something thousand players active right now. This weekend, I fully expect them to hit 700,000. So it's getting there. I mean, it's just 700,000 active players in a game that requires server connectivity. That is a lot. And it is not easy to scale this up when you did not expect your game to be this popular. It's a very difficult, but also good problem to have for them. But you've seen like this CEO has been very, very chill and honest with people and clear with people on stuff. One of the things that he said, let me see if I can find it. The average playtime of Helldivers 2 is now 17 hours and 57 minutes. This is crazy good. Thank you everybody for helping spread democracy, making this game successful. Crap, maybe it was in a reply or something. Anyway, basically what he said in this thing I've been looking for is somebody was asking like, should people still get the game? And he's like, no, if you can't play the game, wait to buy it. That's okay. I'd much rather you wait until you can buy the game and play it than buy it now and hope to eventually be able to play it. He's like, just take your time. We'll fix it. We'll get it figured out. Don't worry. We'll get there. And sure enough, they're getting there slowly but surely. And I think hitting the 700 player concurrent cap is going to help a lot. It probably slows down a little bit the game once more people get the chance to really play it. I don't know what the average playtime is going to settle at. I don't know if this is going to end up being one of those like games that just permanently has 500,000 players, or if it's going to be one of those games that trails off and maybe settles more around like 20, 30,000 concurrent players. Still very good. And I think even 20 to 30,000 players would be above their expected player counts from before launch. But it's going to be interesting to see what the staying power is like. I think there's a lot of potential for post-launch support. I think the core game is fun enough that they could really support this in the long term with cool stuff. They've already mentioned like mechs that they want to bring. There's the potential for an invasion of Super Earth. So there's a lot of cool stuff they could bring to the game to keep it lively. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And they just continually impress everybody with what they've said. One of the other really cool things that was also said, unfortunately, the story of 2024 so far for a lot of people have been dominated by layoffs, by people losing their jobs because a lot of companies overhired. The most iconic one, unfortunately, was in the case of Embracer Group. Embracer Group overhired like mad. They expanded, they bought new studios, they opened new studios, they hired more people in each of their companies, all because Embracer Group thought that they were going to get a big influx of cash. A $2 billion with a B. $2 billion influx of cash. And it didn't actually end up going through. It's a Saudi Arabian-backed investment fund. They were looking at putting $2 billion into Embracer Group. And They described it as transformative. And I would too. If I was about to get $2 billion, I would say that's transformative. Basically, this was going to justify all of their overhiring, all of their overexpansion. And effectively what happened is that they were negotiating this. They were told, hey, you're going to get $2 billion to do whatever you want, basically. Just continue expanding and growing. And so they went and they started doing that before they really had the money. And then the deal fell through and the investment fund decided that the money could be better spent elsewhere. And so they just had bought all of this stuff that they couldn't actually afford. It's like if you were to go and you were applying for a job that was going to pay you $500,000 a year. You were about to just casually take home like $45,000 a month. Okay. And then you're like, in the final interview phase, and they're like, yeah, we're feeling good about this. We have a couple things to tie up, but I think we're looking good. I think you have a real chance of getting this job, real chance, but we'll be in touch soon. A normal, reasonable person would go, okay, I'm excited for this, but I don't have the money yet, so I'm not going to go and do anything stupid. What Embracer Group did is they went and they're like, oh, I almost have the job. Let me go and buy 5 Lambos with, $5,000 a month payments on each of them. But it's going to be okay because I'm going to be making $40,000 a month anyway. So it's going to be fine. And then I'm also going to go and buy rent a mansion, and I'm going to go do all of this stuff. I'm going to buy Rolex on my credit cards and all this stuff. And they just start spending like there's no tomorrow. And then you find out that you didn't get the job. All of a sudden, you have a lot of crap that you can't actually pay for, but you still have it, and you got to find ways of getting rid of it. What they have, the hole that they've dug themselves into is a pretty deep one where they've hired a bunch of people, they've expanded to new studios, they've greenlit projects, and now they can't pay for them. So you've seen Embracer Group just lay off tons of people. They've canceled projects. They've shut down entire studios, like Volition, the guys that originally did like Red Faction and Saints Row, of course, and then Saints Row Reboot was not super well received, as you might recall. And so that whole studio is shut down now. And they have said there's still more layoffs to come through the rest of this year. So they're trying desperately to dig themselves out of that. But at the end of the day, it's still an Embracer Group issue. They are still the ones that screwed up. They could have avoided this if they were more reasonable in their approach, if they weren't so trigger happy with expansion, and now they're suffering. Now they're dealing with the consequences of it. And a lot of people thought, okay, it must just be the way that like executives think about stuff, that they cannot think dynamically enough to realize maybe we should wait till we have the money. We should be more careful and cautious. Maybe it's unreasonable to hire a ton of people. But then we see a story like this. Arrowhead CEO says overhiring would be horrible response to Helldivers 2 success. Arrowhead, of course, being the company behind Helldivers 2, the game has been wildly more successful than they thought. They were probably expecting maybe 10 to 20,000 concurrent players at a time through a platform like Steam. The previous game had about 10,000 peak concurrent, so they were like probably going to be happy if it was going to be 20,000. They're currently raising the player count cap to 700,000. So the game has wildly blown every expectation out of the water. And one of the interesting things about this has been that the Arrowhead CEO has been able to keep that small team, small game kind of indie studio vibe while enjoying all of this crazy success. Specifically what he said was, quote, I want to do a massive shout out to Arrowhead's backend engineers. 4 people 5xing the max of what they designed the engine code for in a week, and we're now looking to go beyond. I don't think you understand what a massive feat this is. It's like turning a Vespa to compete in F1, which is crazy. That's basically what happened. He went on to say, the act of overhiring and then doing layoffs is a horrible practice and a bad experience for employees. What? Employees considering their feelings? What is this? Use short-term solutions for short-term problems such as outsourcing, contractors, or limited time agreements, which is true. Like if there are short-term things, approach it with a short-term mindset instead of like green lighting entire studio acquisitions when you don't have the money. And then when you don't end up getting the money, you're like, oh crap, everybody's fired now. So I want to just tell people, There are still CEOs out there that have more level-headed approaches to running their businesses. Arrowhead is expanding, but they're not over hiring. It's not like they're now trying to get to 2,000 employees and like, okay, Helldivers is the new Call of Duty. Let's do it. They're not doing that. If it ends up being the next Call of Duty, cool, but they're not going to jump into it assuming that, because if it ends up falling through, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have their lives upended because they were overly ambitious and chaotic in their decision making. So what they're doing is they're now hiring some people in the short term to help with like engine code and things like that. And then they're also going and they're trying to get devs to help with support of like content updates, bringing in more monsters, bugs, different types of automatons, new mission types, planets, that type of thing, which is crazy. Is Helldivers really that good? The next COD? No, not really. I mean, I'm exaggerating for the point of the, or purpose of the point. Like, obviously it's not just going to like tomorrow be the next Call of Duty and next year they release another one and it's just as popular. I think it's popular because it's not Call of Duty. It's the opposite of that. And so for them to respond to it that way and try to turn it into Call of Duty would be the mistake. That would be the big problem. They are approaching this much more level-headedly, trying to bring people on with a very clear purpose. They're like, okay, we can afford to bring more people in to help with content, but we're not going to hire hundreds of people trying to turn ourselves into a huge, crazy developer that's going to pump out crazy amounts of stuff, because maybe this isn't long-term. Maybe this is just a ton of success we're enjoying in the short term. Maybe this all goes away tomorrow. Let's be more level-headed, because at the end of the day, it's not like developers are not just little robots that do your bidding. When you hire somebody and they move to your studio, they're moving their family, they're moving their entire livelihood. They find a new place to live, either renting it or buying it. They're shifting their entire life, many times physically, to work at your company. And for you to turn around and then lay them off in 6 months because the game ended up kind of dying out faster than you thought it would, that is just irresponsible. That could have been avoided. And the only reason you ran into that problem was because you were overly ambitious and a little irresponsibly ambitious, perhaps. So it's good to see that they're approaching this much more level-headedly and they're not going chaotically expansive. They're just trying to grow and support the game the best way they can without doing it unreasonably. He took my thing. Red flag, red flag.